Did you know that after the age of 30, you can lose 3 to 5% of your muscle mass per decade if you don't look after yourself? And around 200 million people worldwide suffer with osteoporosis, which can easily be prevented with basic strength training. And maintaining a good posture can help you offset musculoskeletal conditions that affect at least 17 million people in the UK alone. But can you actually improve your strength and posture at the same time? What kind of exercises do you need to do to achieve that? And can this all be done with just one piece of equipment? All of that and more coming up in today's video. So my name's Mike Jones. I'm the founder of a multi-award-winning consultancy that works with businesses and helps busy professionals in leadership and management positions get into a good place with their health and fitness alongside busy lives and jobs. I also used to be a gym owner, so I've got over 5,000 hours of coaching people of all ages, shapes and sizes there. And before that, I was a personal trainer in the army. It's no secret that more and more people are struggling with their health. This isn't because it's hard to be healthy in the modern world, but because our modern lives make it easy for us to be unhealthy. And our bodies work on a use it or lose it principle. So what we need alongside these sedentary, busy lives that we live is simple, sharp, effective methods and systems to help us offset the negatives of bad posture, which is going to lead to this over years, and get us into good posture so that we can feel the best version of ourselves, be pain-free and have good levels of energy. So a very quick bit of understanding before we get into it. If you've seen any of my other videos, I'd like you to understand what we're doing, not just follow me blindly. So bad posture looks like this, good posture looks more like this. And the commonality here is a level of strength and muscular balance in the back of the body. So when we have poor posture, we tend to be really weak in the back of the body, back of the shoulders, glutes aren't very strong. And what that leads to is shoulders coming forward, upper back hurting, lower back hurting, glutes being weak, tightness around here, tightness around here. So for us to offset that, we need to build a level of strength and muscle in the backs of our bodies. But what we also need to do is work through the body as a kinetic change. So if we're tight in our ankles and all around our legs, then the rest of our bodies is going to feel that. So we need to start at the bottom and work up. And what we're going to go through now is how we can strengthen and mobilize the whole body, especially these weak bits, with just one piece of equipment in one setting. So the single piece of equipment that we're going to use is a dumbbell, and we've got a selection of dumbbells here. And what I'm going to do today is take you through a full body protocol for mobilizing and strengthening your whole body so you can improve your posture and strength in just one setting. And what I'll do at the end of the video is provide you with a visual of this workout that you can download, and I'm going to provide you with a chart with some recommended standards of weight to use for your level. So we'll have a weight for a beginner, a weight for when you're intermediate. So you've got something to work through, and I'll divide that chart up for males and for females as well. So you get that at the end of the video. So you've got a choice here. You can either work through this with me as we're going through, or you can watch it, soak up the education, and then use the chart at the very end to work through it in your own time. Okay, so the first part is an assessment, a very quick assessment, and then you can also use this movement as a warm-up, is lower body, can I sit and hold into a squat? So I want to be able to get my hip crease, which is this bit here below my knees, and keep my heels in contact with the floor. I also want to make sure that my knees are over my toes, not like this. If I can't do that, no stress, it's quite common. What I'm going to do is hold on to here just to get myself warmed up. Once we do a little bit of weight in a moment, it'll actually help us get into that position. But you'd always start with an assessment. It's nice for you to see where you're at and see if you can get to this point, and it also starts to stretch you off. Ideally, you want to be able to hold this for 1 minute. If you can't, don't stress. You're off on your flexibility at the moment, but going through this protocol is going to help you fix that. So next we go into the stretch phase. On the guide, you've got 3 stretches for the lower body, and I'm going to show you 3 stretches right now. If you're feeling in a rush, you don't want to go for all 3 of them, that's fine. You can just choose one and alternate it when you do it. So the first one is the ankle stretch. It's very, very common that people are tight in their ankles. So if I can't squat and I get down and I get stuck here, it's because my ankles don't want to come forwards. And that's going to lead to issues, and it's certainly going to put me at risk of getting injured if I start trying to do fast-paced walking or running. I'm going to get an increased risk of injury in this Achilles tendon down here, and when you injure that, it really bloody hurts. So it's a long recovery process as well. So we need to stretch the ankle, and we can do this with our dumbbell really easily. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get into this position here, so I'm already pushing that forwards, and then to get that extra bit of stretch, I'm going to put my dumbbell on here, and now I'm getting a really nice deep stretch in here, and I should hold it for about a minute. All the 3 stretches I'm going to show you now I want to hold for a minute. The thing is with stretching is it's not about absolutely nailing yourself in one workout, it's about consistency. So it's about holding this stretch for a minute and doing that weekly. That's what's going to make the difference, not doing one session where you hold it for 10 minutes and you feel try. So I'll do a minute on one, and a minute on the other, and if I want to increase it towards the end, I'll just put an extra little bit of lean. So the next stretch is a hamstring stretch. There's a couple of ways that we can do this. So first of all, because a lot of us are going to be very tight in the hamstrings, we don't need to use the dumbbell. We're just going to stand, keep the knees straight and locked out, and we're going to forward fold. And I've got my hips about shoulder width, and I'm going to forward fold and try without bending my knees to see if I can touch my toes. If I can, I'm doing pretty well. If I can't, then I know I've got work to do. And to increase the stretch, put the hands on the back of my calves, and I'm going to pull myself down and hold that. And try and get that minute again. And what I'd say with the stretching is, once you've held it for about 30 seconds, just try and get an extra level of depth, because your nervous system will ease off and let you get a little bit more of a stretch. If you want to do this differently, or make it a little bit more challenging, or mix it up, grab your dumbbell, go onto a raised surface, have your toes hanging over the edge, hold the dumbbell like so, and then you're going to use that weight to pull you down. Notice that I'm not bending my knees. I'm trying to send my hips back, and it's fine if your back rounds off. That's absolutely fine, because it's good for the spine to bend as well. And again, I just want to hold this for a minute, and that's going to really ease my hamstrings off over time. And then the third lower body stretch that we're going to do is the groin. Okay, so the inside of the legs. Guys regularly get really tight in here. Some ladies do as well, but it's really common with us blokes to be super tight in here. A few different ways you can do this, but the stretch I want you to focus on is actually a dynamic stretch. So we're going to go wide with our stance. Now, go as wide as, I don't want to say feels comfortable, feels slightly uncomfortable. So if you feel like this is absolutely killing you to be this wide, then bring your feet closer together. Stretching's about, again, it's about consistency. And then what I'm going to do is pulses. So I'm going to come down, hinging my hips. I'm not rounding my back this time. I'm trying to hinge my hip, and I'm going to try and touch in the middle of my feet and then back. And then what I want to do, once I've found this place where that stretch is just giving me a nice pull on the inside of my leg, is I'm going to do 10 pulses, which is where I push back like so. Be really careful with this at the start, because if you've got really tight groins, this is going to really hurt you. So you might find that you're just like this at the start. That's absolutely fine. But build up over time to touching, and then over time you'll be able to come back, and you'll see some people that are super flexible, more flexible than me, and they can like get their chest down to the floor, which I can't do and probably never will be able to. So the next part of the protocol is we activate. So this is where we activate the weak muscles in the body. Now, most of us are going to have weak muscles in the back of the body, typically shoulders and glutes. We're focused on the lower part right now. So it's really common when we've got weak glutes and underactive glutes. The problem is if we don't activate them, we're going to use the muscles that are already strong, and that's not going to help us fix our posture, because we're not going to fix the imbalanced weak muscles. So we have to activate them. We have to wake them up a little bit. We have to teach our brain and our nervous system to talk to those muscles again. So we're going to go for a glute activation protocol now. And there's two things that we're going to try, two things that we're going to play around with. The first one is a glute bridge. So I'll show you with and without the weight. So without the weight, I lie on my back. I put my heels on the floor and lift my toes up slightly. I've got about 45 degrees of angle. I'm going to put these on my glasses because I always tend to muffle it with my beard. Oh, look at that. Perfect. Right, so I'm going to put my heels on the floor like so. I'm going to lie back, and then I'm going to lift my tailbone first, tense my core, and then squeeze up. And at the top, I'm trying to really tense my glutes, my butt muscles. What most of us can do is we're going to try and do it with our quads. So we have to really try and make this conscious effort to squeeze the glutes at the top. The whole point in this exercise is that I'm waking my glutes up. And then if I feel like I'm smashing that, I can make it harder by putting a dumbbell on my hips, put my hands on it like so, and then squeeze up and squeeze the dumbbell at the top. And what I'm doing is I'm having that good 1 to 2 second pause at the top there, where I'm really trying to switch my glutes on. I've been training for years. I'm still dominant my quads, so I have to really consciously think about waking my butt cheeks up, otherwise my quads take over, and then that's going to make my lower back start hurting. That's the first one. The second one that we can do, and you can mix it up, is to, do I look ridiculous? Is to do a sumo deadlift. And again, it doesn't need to be heavy, because this is about activation. Remember, all we're trying to do is activate. You're getting a zoom in because you want to see the... So all we're doing is activating here, right? So a sumo deadlift is where I go wide. And what this is doing is reducing lower back and leg usage and increasing glute usage, and glutes your butt cheeks, right? So I've got this nice wide stance, twist my toes out slightly, grab my dumbbell. What I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to keep my back squeezed and active. You're not doing this heavy, so it doesn't matter if your technique's all over the shop, just play around with it, you'll get better over time. But I'm trying to keep my back nice and active, squeeze my hips back, and I'm gonna come through, and at the top, I'm tensing my butt cheek. Lisa, I'll give you permission to look at my bum. So I come down, and then I squeeze my bum at the top. You can play around with how you hold the dumbbell.
And the whole point is activation. A couple of things to think about is that when I'm going down, I'm trying not to send my knees forwards. I'm trying to twist my knees out and send my hips back. Now, a lot of you are going to find this really awkward and weird because your legs are going to want to take over, but over time, you'll feel the activation in your glutes. But the key thing is at the top here, tense in my butt cheeks. 10 of those. So you can either do both of those, 10 reps of each, or you can just choose one. Lisa on the camera's laughing because of this.
You're in a call centre.
Right, so the next part, we've done stretch, we've done activate. Now we want to do strengthen, the juicy bit, the interesting bit. So with this, remember the whole point in this is to improve strength and to improve posture. Okay, so we're focusing equally on the weight as we are the technique. If we let the technique go out the window, we're not going to get the postural improvements. We're only going to use the muscles that are already strong. So we have to bring a lot of conscious, mindful effort to these reps. This isn't just a standard strength training workout. So the first one we're going to do is squats. Then we're going to look at Romanian deadlifts, and then we're going to look at single leg squats as well. So we've got 3 different movements that we can focus on. Again, you can do all 3 if you like. So you could do sets of 10 on each one, or you could do 3 sets of 10 on one week, 3 sets of 2 on the next, etc., etc. A couple of things I want you to think about then: reps and tempo. Reps and tempo. So your reps is how many repetitions of the movement you do. So if I said you do 3 sets of 10, you do 10 reps, 1, 2, 3, have a rest, do that 3 times. You want about 60 to 90 seconds rest between in something like this, but there's a tempo as well. And when we're doing this style of training here, where we're trying to activate weak muscles, we want to make sure that we're doing a slow movement on the down phase and a bit of a pause in the bottom phase. So for example, with my squat, with my front squat, I'm going to come down nice and controlled, about 3 seconds, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to have a 1 to 2 second pause at the bottom and then come up about 1 to 2 seconds as well. But what I'm doing as I'm coming up is I'm thinking about using my bum, using my quads in unison. If I'm very quad dominant, which is a lot of us, we're just going to try and put it all through the quads like this. And you notice that my bum muscle isn't really doing a lot there. Then I'm not getting that strength building in my glutes. Hopefully, because you've done your activation work, you're going to feel your glutes. So the first movement then is a front squat. We're going to hold the dumbbell in a front rack position, and there's a reason for this. I'm holding it up like so, and then I'm coming down into my position here, and I'm going to put my elbows on my knees. Now the reason for this is that it's actually giving me that ankle stretch at the bottom as well. What I don't want to do at the bottom is round off and switch off like so. I want to stay active. I want to squeeze my knees out, because when I do that, that's activating my glutes. I'm going to come up and down. How wide should your feet be? We're all slightly different, but on average, you just want to be slightly outside of hip width with your feet, and you don't want to have your toes twisted more than 45 degrees. So this is too wide. So you want to be around here. If you're, depending on the length of your femurs and stuff like that, it will differ a little bit, but it should be roughly around there. And when we come down to that bottom position, knees over toes, back nice and active. So there's my rep, and coming down. And as I'm doing those reps, I'm having that pause at the bottom. And when I'm coming up, as I've already said, I'm going to reiterate the point, I'm squeezing my quads and my glutes at the very top. And I'm squeezing my core. So that's probably a really important thing that I should mention. When I come down on each rep, I breathe in at the top and tense my core. Keep nice and tight as I go throughout the rep, and then I let that breath out as I get to the top. What that does, it helps my whole body work in unison. If I'm just breathing out at the bottom, everything's off and weak, and again, you can see the back of my body's not getting the work that it needs. When I'm in this position, all of that muscle in the back of my body's getting worked as well. So 10 reps of that, and like I said, you've got the choice. You can do 3 sets of 10, or you can do 1 set of 10 on that, and then the next 2 movements as well. It's entirely up to you. Okay, movement number 2 is a lunge. Now what this does is it works the leg in unison, and it hits that butt cheek a little bit more as well. So there's a couple of ways you can do this. You can do it without the weight, which is where we step forward. This is a forward lunge. And the position I'm in is that my back knee touches the floor, but I'm not resting on that back knee because that would hurt. So I am now, but in the reps, it should just be tapping the floor, and that's my sign to come back up. My front foot is just twisted in slightly. And what that does is it helps me keep the weight loaded through my glute. If I'm out like this, I can start not being very stable on that knee. So I'm going to twist my front foot in slightly so I look like a bit of a duck, come down, knee out, and then come back. This hits your glutes a bit more. Now we can make that more challenging, because remember we're going to do 10 reps in total, so it's only going to be 5 on each leg. I can make this more challenging by holding my weight in the front rack position again, come down, come back. If you haven't gone up to the heavier weight, because we're going to talk about this at the end, about going up in weight as you advance through these stages, you can make this more challenging by doing more reps. So you could do 20 reps total, which would be 10 on each leg. Or, just to mix things up, you can make it more interesting and harder by going into a front rack position. So this is actually making it work your core more because you twist, because you're having to stabilize that weight as you go down, and it's working your shoulder blade, so you can change around with arms. Or if you want to make it really hard, you can try the overhead lunge. And if you can do that, you're doing pretty good with your flexibility and posture. And this is good for your posture because it's strengthening the back of your shoulder blade as you come down as well. So that's movement number 2. And then movement number 3 for strength, we're going to do a Romanian deadlift. So as you get stronger, the weight that you're going to be able to do on here isn't going to be particularly challenging. But remember, the whole point in this is that you're activating and hitting weak muscles. So it shouldn't feel super heavy, but this will activate and strengthen and hurt your hamstrings. So I'm going to grab onto my dumbbell like so, and I'm going to hinge my hips back and keep my knees very stiff. I might be able to bend them slightly and get down as low as I can without having to bend my knees around my back. And I'm going to come back up and squeeze my glutes at the top. And what I want to feel is this burn in the hamstrings. I'm going to go for 10 reps. And I want to do nice, slow reps on the way down, so at least kind of 2 to 3 seconds. And the reason for this, just if you're interested, is when you're going down, which is called the eccentric phase of a lift, your muscle, when you're going up, your muscle fibers do this. So when I'm doing that, my muscle fibers go like that, and they claw. When I'm going down, they pull against each other, and if you go down slowly, it creates like micro tears in the muscle, which basically makes the muscle break down, which means that it comes back bigger. Because when we're strength training, that's what we're trying to do, especially when we're doing hypertrophy, muscle building. We want to break down the muscle, then fuel ourselves so that it grows back bigger. So that down phase is really good for getting that muscle building response. I'm going to come down nice and slow, feel that burn, which I am feeling, and then come back up. As you get stronger, if you want to add more weights to it, of course you can. You can go to double dumbbells. And like I said, at the end of this, I'm going to give you that kind of recommended strength categories with all the different dumbbell weights and what I would advise you can do. So that's our 3 strength movements for lower body. So we've done the lower body, we've assessed our mobility, we've stretched off the commonly tight areas, we've activated the weak muscles, and then we've done strength training across hamstrings, glutes, and legs and core. What we're going to move on to now is the other half of the body, which is the upper half, because that's really important as well. So like the lower body, the issues come from the hips, tightness and weakness around the hips. The upper body, most of the issues come from the shoulders. So tightness typically in the front of the shoulders, weakness in the back. So what we're going to do now is the same as what we did with the lower body. Assess that mobility and then stretch tight areas and then strengthen it with a few movements. To assess this, I need a pole, which my magic assistant is going to pass me through the camera because that's our little style now. I just like that, it looks really cool. So the movement that we're going to assess is a close grip behind the neck press. Okay, so you don't have to have a pole. This is 32 mil waste pipe from Screwfix that we just made look fancy by putting some end pipes on, but you can buy a broomstick for this, or you've probably got a broomstick in your house. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go nice wide grip to start off with, put the pole on my back like so, and see if I can press. Now some of you with particularly tight shoulders aren't even going to be able to do that, okay? And that just shows us, well, you tighten your shoulders, okay? So you've got work to do. But if we are feeling flexible, we're going to go closer grip like so, tense that part of the back up and see if we can press straight up without hitting the back of the head, okay? So a pass is this nice wide piece here, but over time we want to be trying to bring it closer. And then as we've perfected that, we will eventually move into the overhead squat. But some of the movements that we look at towards the end of today will test that. But a very basic assessment is just, can you do a rear neck press like so? Okay, so now we're going to stretch the upper body. By the way, my glasses are wonky because I put the microphone on this side. So we're going to stretch the upper body. So we've got 3 different stretches. Again, you can go through each one if you want to do the full thing, or you can do alternating as you go through these workouts in different weeks. So the first one is a pec stretch. So it's very common that your pec, which is your chest, gets tight, because we spend a lot of time in this position here. What that does is it pulls the shoulder forwards. There's loads of little different muscles going into the shoulder. Your lats go into your shoulder goes into your shoulder, and so does your pec. So if all of this is tight, it kind of ends up like this. So we need to be able to stretch that off. So what I'm going to do is a pec stretch. I go to a wall. I'm using a pole just for visual effects of the video. I go to a wall. I would be at a wall now. I'm going to get my elbow at a right angle. Don't try and do all this. Don't worry about doing this perfectly. If you can feel the stretch, you're doing it good enough. So I'm going to go to the wall, get a right angle with my armpit, a right angle with my arm like so, and then I'm going to twist into the wall like so. So obviously I'd have a wall here, so I'm not doing this, but that works as well. But I'm trying to get face to the wall-ish, and then twist. And I can play around with my foot position to find out where I feel a stretch across my chest. And I'm starting to get that now. What you don't want to do is just twist like your lungs. You want to keep your core nice and tight and then twist through the upper body. Don't fall into the trap of thinking that the more you move, the more of a stretch you're getting. It's all about how it feels, not how it looks. So nice and tight in the core. Come in, I'm going to hold that for a minute. And remember, again, when you're stretching, after you've done about 30 seconds, try and increase the stretch because your nervous system will release it a bit and then you get that deeper stretch. You can also play around with going higher. You're probably going to feel that more in the shoulder if you go higher, but just play around with it. There is no perfect right or wrong. What's important is that you're getting a bit of a stretch. Second upper body stretch, one of my favorites. People love this. It really makes your shoulders feel nice and open. It's called a dislocation. So we get a pole again, and we go for a nice wide grip on the pole. Okay, always start wide because you can injure yourself doing this. And what we want to do, and don't just do this straight away, please listen before you do it, is we want to keep the core nice and tight, and we want to do what's called a dislocation, which is where we come round and then we come back to the front. Now, if you get to here and you can't get any further because your arms bend, then you're not going any further because you're going to injure yourself coming around like that. So what you do is you just come back as far as you can, or you go wider on the grip, and you just over time, you'll find that you do get to a point where you can come all the way around. If you're very flexible, you can start to bring your hands in to get more of a stretch. So I'm not very flexible, but I can move around. So I'm just put my hands slightly closer there, and now I'm getting even more of a stretch. A couple of pointers with this. Keep your core tight. So look, this is good. Core tight, and I'm not shrugging my traps like this. So I'm trying to be nice and relaxed in my traps because that's bad. So I'm trying to keep my traps relaxed, my shoulder blades back and down, and come around. This is not good, where I'm like lifting my core up, or I'm shrugging my traps to get around. So it's just bringing awareness to your body. So core tight, shoulder blades back and down, try and come around relaxed. That's going to give you a really nice stretch in your shoulders. And what we want to do is about 10 reps. If you want to challenge, you can try on around the world, which is this, but your arms aren't allowed to bend. If you're trying that at home now, I know it's absolutely blowing your mind and that you look crazy because I see how many people struggle with that movement. And then number 3 is rolling and opening up your spine. So this isn't necessarily a stretch as such, but opening up a tight muscular system, which is your spine, but it is stretching muscles as well. Now, you do need a bit of equipment for this, so don't stress if you haven't got it. You don't have to do it, it's not essential. You're going to improve it anyway, but this would speed up the process. So you can do this with a foam roller. You can pick these up from Amazon for a tenner. I know, and Aldi and Lidl often have them as well. But like I said, I have said you only need one piece of equipment. So you don't. This isn't essential, but it's a nice stretch, especially for those of you who've got tight upper backs. So those of you typically guys who are feeling really tight up here, this is going to feel really nice. So what you do is you lie on the foam roller, you get it into the upper part of your back, not the lower. And what you're going to do is keep your hips down, arms overhead, and you're going to try and open up like so. And then once you're there, you're going to try and hold that for about 10 to 30 seconds. Then you're going to come up, go a little bit higher. And what I'm doing is kind of working through the vertebrae. I'm just trying to get a little bit higher. Notice that I'm not lifting my hips up. Okay, and those of you who are really stiff, you're not going to be able to do this. You're just going to get to here. But I'm trying to make this movement happen where my spine bends, but not my hips. Because if I do this, I'm not actually achieving anything. So I'm trying to like bend my spine backwards. And you're going to go all the way up to the base of your neck. And if you spend about 10 to 30 seconds, about 3 or 4 vertebrae, it's going to take you about a minute. So that's the third option that you've got there. But like I said, if you haven't got this equipment, don't stress. This will improve with the workouts and the training that we're doing anyway. Another option you can do is find something like this. If you've got a giant ball in your house or something that's this kind of shape, a couple of cushions, and you can do the same thing. So it doesn't have to be a foam roller. It's all about just trying to get that back to bend and open up, especially this upper back here. And if you're really brave, you can get your partner to stand or press down into your back, but make sure they do it on the sides of your spine, not right in the middle. Okay, so same as the lower body, now we need to activate the weak muscles. Now, typically, upper body, the weak muscles are all around the shoulder blade, around here. So that's the bit that we want to activate, because when this stuff's better and more active, it pulls us back. And you'll typically see that someone with bad posture, the back looks like this, because everything's loaded on the front. And somebody with good posture, you're going to notice that they're more like this. From the side view, bad posture, good posture. And you'll also notice, if you have a look at your hands, when your posture's starting to go the wrong way, your hands will be turned in like this. Okay, and as your posture gets better, your hands will be turned out like that, and that all comes from the shoulder. So mine aren't perfect. I'm a little bit forward dominant. I probably do too much bench press and too many push-ups, but I'm not awful. Okay, so as my posture improves and I do this stuff or I maintain this stuff, it moves me away from being like this. It moves me more towards here. Let's go on to activation. So we're going to activate the scaps. So the way that we do that without any equipment is really easy. So the first thing I'm going to do is a set of WYIs. If you've seen any of my other videos, you've seen me do this before. And this looks easy, but it's really difficult because these muscles are quite weak. So I lie on my back, bring my camera over here, and I create a W shape with my back, a Y, and an I. That's 1 rep. 1, 2, 3. I'm not going to make you watch me do 10 because that'd be boring. And then if you want to make it really challenging to add an extra bit of spice into it, you're going to do something called a snow angel or a reverse snow angel, because I'm not going to lie on my back. So a snow angel is this. You're going to do 10 of these. 1, 2. And the hard bit there, as you probably noticed with me, is the top bit. So it's at that top bit I'm trying to keep my hands off the floor and get my hands together. So the temptation is for my hands to touch the floor. So if you watch as I come to the top here, my hands want to come down because my shoulders want to pull me forwards. So I'm working my shoulder blades when I try and keep those hands up and bring them together. So if you do those two things, you're going to get a real good burn in those shoulder blades, and that's good because it's activating them. Okay, so now we go on to the strength bit. I've got a big red mark on my head from lying on the floor there, but so we know it's authentic. So strength, so same protocol that we did before. So now we've activated, we've stretched, now we've got the body kind of awake a little bit. Now we need to create strength throughout the whole upper body so that the posture moves itself into the right way. So we're going to do 3 different movements. Same as I mentioned with the lower body, you can do one of these for 3 sets of 10, or you can do each one for a set of 10, whatever suits you best, okay? So the first one, and you'll notice that we press across 180 degrees, but that'll make sense to you in a moment. First one is a press, okay? So there's a couple of ways that we can do the press. Again, we're gonna go for 10 reps, and we wanna think about our tempo. So I can get my core nice and tight, so I'm not flaring my ribs. Core nice and tight, and I'm gonna press up, pause at the top, and then come down under tempo. What I'm trying to avoid is just throwing it up really fast, because that's not getting me that full balance. And I'm also trying to avoid flaring my ribs. Okay, because if I'm tight in my shoulder, my body tries to make up for that by flaring in my ribs. So I keep my core nice and tight and press up like so. If I'm really tight in my shoulder, which a lot of us are going to be, we're going to struggle to move the dumbbell back. We're going to want to finish here. We need to go lighter. And we need to keep that weight light and try and pull it back so that we're building up the strength in the back of the shoulder. The reason that you press forwards is because you've got more strength here than you have here. And even though you can lift more weight when you press forwards, all you're doing is reinforcing that bad posture. So it's always better to start lighter and get into a good position and build up over time. Good bit of news for you, especially gents and blokes, because you need this advice. Even though it's frustrating having to go lighter to get into a good position, these little bits of weak muscle get strong really quickly. So your weights will shoot up when you're doing this stuff. Now, we can make this harder if we don't want to go up in weight and we want to make it more challenging. So let's say the weight I've got, I can do 10 reps, no problem. I can make it more challenging in a few different ways. So the first one is I can go into a partial squat. And what this does is it makes it more challenging on the shoulder blade. So straight away, that's burning out my shoulder blade. So that's one thing that I can do. And then the other thing I can do is try it seated on the box, which is kind of a little bit easier than what I just did there, but I want to get into an active squat position and then press up like so. So there's a couple of variations. And finally, you can make it really challenging on your posture by doing what's called a Z press, which is where you sit on the floor, and this is going to challenge that flexibility in your lower back at the same time. You press up like so. So there's loads to play around with on the press variation. If you've got a heavy weight that you're struggling with to get your 10 reps, you can make it a little bit easier by doing a push press. As long as you still get the negative aspect of the lift, the down bit under control, then it's still okay. So if this is a little bit too heavy for me to press, what I could do, if I want to get up to this weight, is do a bit of a push press and then guide the down phase, because when you're doing that down phase, you're still building strength. So it's not cheating because you're still getting the down phase. However, if you do a push press and you can't bring it down, it's too heavy, go to a lighter weight. Remember, we're going to talk about the weight categories at the end of this video. Upper body strength movement number 2 is a close grip push-up or a press with a dumbbell. So if we haven't got the strength to do the push-up, we can adapt this by turning it into a dumbbell. So this is an instance where we use weight as an easier option than body weight, which a lot of people can't get their head around. So close grip push-up, typically would be this, but that's not what I mean today. I mean just about shoulder width. And the reason for that is it trains your triceps, the back of your arms, and it's really good for hitting your shoulder blades as well on the way down. A mistake a lot of people make with a push-up is they go really wide, and then everything's cranked through the shoulder. And the reason that people find that easier is because of what we've talked about already. People tend to be dominant in the front of their shoulder, but we want to fix that, remember. So you might find this harder, but trust me, stick with it, and all of your strength and your posture will improve. So we want to go close grip, and we want to make sure the elbows come back. And what's really important is that on the way down, I squeeze my shoulder blades. So as I'm coming down, look, I'm actually retracting, consciously squeezing through my shoulder blades, and that's keeping me nice and tight and distributing the strength building component of it through my back, my shoulders, my triceps, and my chest, not all through my chest. So this is bad, this is good, and you can see the difference. You can see my shoulders crank forwards here. You can see here I'm in a much more stable position. Tempo still applies. You can have a little rest at the bottom, that's fine. You don't have to stay active. So you can switch off at the bottom, keep tight, drive back up and go for tempo. We make that easier by dropping the knees. Okay, so knees down, still nice and tight in my core. Come down and back to the top. Notice my hands are around, my thumbs are just in line with my kind of, just below my kind of nipple line on my chest. So if I'm too far forwards, I'm going to turn it into a tricep exercise. I want to be around here, come up, lock out. Now, if that's still too hard, that's fine. We just want to mix it up. We can turn it into a dumbbell movement, and we do a floor press. So floor press, so I lie like so, elbow locked in. It's basically the same movement. Doesn't really matter where my legs are, as long as my core's nice and tight. Press up, squeeze down. This is an easier movement, so it enables me to build that strength up without having to move the whole of my body weight. It makes sense, right, that this is a 15 kg dumbbell, for example, but that's actually putting less load through me than my 100 kgs of body weight, which I'd probably put less of that through because some of the weight's on my foot, but this is definitely lighter than a push-up, but it's still a really good movement. Some people might argue that you should do it that way. Trust me, I think it's better for your posture and balance if you have the dumbbell this way and you squeeze the tricep and the shoulder blade on the way down, then drive up. Très bien. And then the third movement is a bent over row. So the bent over row, if you think about it, we've done press overhead, we've done a push forward, and now we're doing a pull. So we're working across the ranges of motion in the shoulder. And it's doing that helps us achieve that balance throughout the shoulder and stops us being dominant on the front shoulder. What do people tend to do? Too much bench press, too much push-ups. Think about our lives. We're sat down, we're on computers, we're typing, we're pushing doors, so everything's on the front. We tend to neglect the back. So again, this is a good movement for the back, but if we don't do it right, in a weird way, it can still hit the front of our shoulder. So we want to make sure we're doing it right. So we use our dumbbell. I think it's better to use something to lean on, because I think that helps you focus on your form more. But you don't have to, but I'm going to lean onto something like so. Get my core nice and tight, so I'm tensing my stomach and my back flat. So I don't want to be like this, I want to be in this position here. For those of you who are tight, and when we're doing the remaining deadlift series, you're going to find that just being in this position hurts your hamstrings. It's just something that's going to improve over time. So I get into this position, and what I want to do is pull the dumbbell in, and I'm trying to consciously squeeze my scap at the back. I just want to show the difference between good and bad. So this here, look, Lisa, if you just put the camera around my back, see how my scapula is moving, my shoulder blade. So I'm trying to really think about doing that. I'm not just twisting my body, I'm keeping my back flat and squeezing my shoulder blade. What a lot of people are going to do is they're just going to tense through this upper part of the trap, and they're going to be in this position here. So I want you to consciously think about elbow back, shoulder blade positioned. If you can't do that with a heavier weight, go lighter. Trust me, over time it's going to boost your strength up and improve your posture. So I've put into here, nice pause at the top, slow on the way down. The dumbbell, I'm stand up now, sits around there for me. So I'm not up here, I'm not over here, so I'm pulling it in. It's almost like I'm pulling it into my abdomen slightly, but what I really want to focus on is that elbow position. 10 reps on each side. And now we've done our 3 different strength movements in the upper body. So I've got a bonus for you at the end of doing that. I want you to work on one of these 4 dynamic movements. Now these are interesting because they bring all of that together. And the reality is, until you've done those first 2 pieces of the protocol for a while, you're going to find these movements hard. But the good thing about that is that as you've been doing it for a while, you're going to realize how much better you get at these movements, and that's going to feel good. So there's 4 different ones. You can choose between the 4, and I would say just work on doing between 10 and 20 reps. We're not so focused this time on doing things slowly. We're going a little bit more for explosive power now. Also be careful if you haven't got that flexibility. So if you can't press overhead, just be careful throwing these things overhead, because if your shoulder's not flexible enough yet, it's going to, you're going to risk injury. So wait until you've got that kind of position in where you can lock stuff out, or just start doing this stuff with a light weight to avoid hurt yourself. But have a play around with these. So we've got 4 different movements. So the first one is a snatch. So the snatch, named after the Olympic movement where they take the weight from the floor straight over their head, we're going to do with our dumbbell. The reason that I prefer teaching this with a dumbbell over a kettlebell is it's a little bit less technical. So to do a snatch with a dumbbell, I get into this position here, nice and flat from the floor, grab onto the kettlebell, dumbbell, bring it straight overhead. Notice how it's going in a nice straight line. It's not going like this. Okay, so I want to pull it up and use it in a straight line. And what's happening there is my hips are driving it up, and then my shoulder is locking it out. So I'm getting that nice full body benefit. The reason it's a little bit harder to teach with a kettlebell is because I have to flick it round, and it can hurt people's wrists if they don't get the technique right. So you have to kind of twist as you come up and punch, but a lot of people struggle with that and they hurt their wrists. So it is easier to do with a dumbbell. Now, ideally, when you're doing this with a bit of practice, you'd be able to go from alternating arms. So on the way down, I go from that arm, and on the way down, I change arms onto that arm. 2. And you can see I'm getting out of breath just doing 3 reps because it's using my full body. That's the first one. The second one that I'm going to focus on is really hard. This is probably the hardest one. This is a thruster, okay? And this uses, again, the full body, but it uses your legs a lot more. So when we did that, that's using the hips and the hamstrings and the glutes. This one's going to use my legs more. So I'm going to get into a front rack position. We're going to go into a squat and then press at the top of the squat. And notice how I press last. So I snap my hips first, then I press. I don't press on the way up because that'll make it really hard. Okay, and then ideally, I try and do 10 on each arm, and you can see, again, I'm getting out of breath just from doing a couple. It's important that you lock out at the top so that you get the full benefit of the movement. Third movement is a clean and jerk. So this is a hang, so I go from the hang position, like so, pat my hips, come into here, and then I push and lock it out. Notice on the way down, just make light contact with the shoulder and roll round. And then the fourth movement, or I think it's first on the guide, is a swing. So this is actually a bit easier with a kettlebell, a little bit more challenging with a dumbbell just because of the grip. But I'm going to do a full kettlebell swing, which is an American kettlebell swing, I think. There's Russian and American. One is to here, but we want to go all the way overhead. What I'm trying to do is lock those arms out in that overhead position. So those are the 4 dynamic movements. So at the end of that protocol, however you've done it, I want you to choose one of them and try and do between 10 and 20 reps, just to get that feeling of powerful activation throughout the whole body and being a little bit more dynamic, because all the first stuff was stretching and slow controlled. It's good for us to do it under a little bit of speed and power as well. Okay, so that's the full protocol. I said at the beginning of the video, I'd give you some suggested standards of dumbbell weight, so you've got somewhere to start and know what kind of weights to go with. So if you just zoom out a little bit and come to my armory, I feel like I'm the Matrix when they're getting all the weapons out of the armory. I've got the chart, which I'll attach somewhere around the screen now and that you can download after this video. So for ladies, this is the standards that I would suggest. So if you're a complete beginner, start doing all that with a 6, and you can just build these up, build up a little collection as you go along. By the way, if that's too hard, go lighter. It doesn't matter. These are just suggested standards from working with lots of different people. As you get through that and you start to feel comfortable with that, going up to an 8. Once you've nailed that, and that's going to be a while, this shouldn't be like a couple of weeks, this should be a few months of that, you can either move up to a 10 or a 12.5. And then when you're really smashing it, if you're absolutely on the ball and you're feeling super strong, you can try and move up to a 15. That's really hard. That's a really high standard. So I'd say most of us want to be working around there. If you're over 50, I've put separate standards, which are just a little bit lighter than this below that on the chart. And then gents, I've got your standards here as well. So again, suggested standards. Don't worry if you can't do these, push your ego out the way, just go lighter. The key thing is that you can do this stuff with form. So at the beginner stage, we've got 8 kg. So a nice small 8 kg over here. If that's too hard, go lighter, it doesn't matter. Then aim to move up to the 12.5, then up to the 15. And again, that's the top end for ladies that we just mentioned. That's gonna be hard for a lot of us, even for me, I train quite a bit. That's gonna start aching me on those kind of 10 reps on things like the shoulder press. And then if you're feeling super strong, you've got the 22.5. For me, just to give you some context with that, I'm probably going to struggle to get my 8 reps of a strict press, but that's where I might go into doing a push press and a negative on the way down. And it's also a good weight for me because it's going to help me with things like those lower body movements, which are obviously stronger than the upper body. Over time, you just want to work through these and build up a bit of a collection. Again, all of that's down in the chart attached to the video. So that's it. That's my full strength and posture improving protocol. So you can do that in less than 30 minutes. You can mix it up. You can do the whole thing in one. You can do upper body one day, lower body the next, whatever works best for you. The key thing to understand is that if you just want to improve your posture and you want to have a good baseline of strength that keeps you healthy, it doesn't need to be any more complicated than what we've just done. Now, there are some things that physios might argue about, saying that you should do more twisting movements, etc. I agree, there's definitely a time and scope for that, but just keep it simple at the beginning. Like, this is more than enough to help you fix your posture, build strength throughout your body, and get yourself into a good place. I would highly encourage you to download the chart that I've made to go with this. So again, I'll stick that around the video and I'll put the link for it in the comments. So you can just download that and work through it. It's got everything on there. It's got the weights, it's got the movements. What I'd recommend is coming back to this video the first few times that you work through this and just make it a habit. Once you've done this a few times, it'll become second nature. You've then embedded into your brain this program to keep your body healthy. It doesn't need to be any more complicated than this. If you do start doing this and your confidence builds up and you start to feel good about yourself and you crave more of a challenge, what I'd like you to do is go and watch my video on the 30-minute workout protocol, which is more focused on overall health and fitness, not just posture and strength, but this is a great starting point. So I'll link to that 30-minute protocol, which adds the fitness component in, the conditioning component in. I'll link to that at the end of the video. If you found this useful, please do like and subscribe to the channel. If there's anything else you'd like me to cover specifically that's related to health and fitting in around a busy life, please do not hesitate to make a note in the comments and visit my personal website, mikejones.live, to see more of our resources that we've got available for you.